to you guys about setting up patrol bases. Now, in general, a lot of people think, oh, well, set up a patrol base, that's where I'm just going to camp out. That's, our campsite for our unit or whatever for actions that we're going to be doing in an area. And that is true. However, it's going to depend on the situation because you might want to be nomadic and just you're only setting up lying up position. So the situation really dictates the nature of your patrol base and even how long you're holding it, the stuff you do inside of the patrol base, etc., and when you do certain things. So, anyways, the situation really does dictate. So, generally speaking, if you're going to be setting up a patrol base in the sense of conducting missions and just staying in an area, like being in the field for a week at a time, typically you only want to be setting up a patrol base for up to 24 hours before you shift. And you should have that relatively pre-planned, at least your first two. So you'd have a primary and alternate location for any area, even for hasty patrol bases where it's just a lying up position would be a good example, where you've been reconning and moving throughout the day and now you gotta lie up for the night or whatever, unless you plan on moving. But anyways, you're gonna have to take a rest at some point to do maintenance and stuff like that. So you gotta understand the situations. There's different situations that'll dictate what you do. So reconnaissance, ambushes, just looking for the enemy and stuff like that, scouting out for a moving element, stuff like that. So you got to set up an area. So next thing is setting up and the process for establishing a patrol base. So this isn't just like, you know what, this is a good enough place. It needs to be very deliberate. You need to go where the enemy would not necessarily look for you because you're in a stationary position. You're very vulnerable. Offense is usually a lot better than defense, so you need to pick an area where it's very unlikely that the enemy is going to find you. There's good covering, concealment, and stuff like that, and hopefully you'll have good micro-terrain to maneuver, areas to withdraw from. You don't want to have your back, to something. You don't want to really be pinned in or anything where you can be ambushed, where they can see where you're at and then plan an assault on your position early in the morning. Really you want to recon the area, have a leader's recon. Everybody puts in a security halt in their own little area, covering their trail. So typically a fish hook is a lot better than an L or what they call a dog leg, where it's just a little L. So the path is this way and then they just dog leg over. And the enemy would, if they had trackers, they would just turn in, and then the rear security or the main security would have to deal with them. But it's very likely the enemy would see where they're going because tracking, you're supposed to be looking forward. So sorry about all that detail, but I think it's necessary. So the best thing I would say is either fish hook or check mark, where you're looping around. Give yourself plenty of time to react to the enemy move out or whatever, so nice and wide, and then you're overwatching the trail, so you can do action, or you can do a check mark where you go a lot further than your trail, where it starts grooving, and then do a diagonal cut well away from it, where you're covered and concealed. You can watch your own trail and ambush trackers if need be, and conduct stills and stuff. So you would halt in that area. You would halt off your trail in an area, and your patrol would conduct stills and, watch for the enemy. Then the leaders would go ahead and recon a patrol base, and they would recon not only the primary but the alternate areas as well, hopefully, if you had an option. They would be looking at emplacements for specific areas, so you're not just looking, oh yeah, this generally is okay. You would look at specific areas where you want like support by fire and stuff like that, and typically you want an area where you're fish hooking into it as well, because again, the trackers could be following you at night, and these are lessons learned in blood. So anyways, for the setup, it can be very intricate as far as reconnaissance is concerned, because you want to make sure your area is good to go, and it can take a while. So it's very good to make sure that your team is set up in an area pre-patrol base to where it's nice and secure and they can actually take action against the enemy. And a lot of that has to do with GOTWA, which I already covered it on my channel, where you're going to be doing a leader's recon, you're going to be separating, so people are going to know where you're going, how long you're going to be gone, and what to do if there's enemy contact or you've been gone too long. So anyways, once you set that up, go ahead and get everybody to ruck up, get to their lying up area or patrol base, and you're going to place everybody and make sure that their sectors of fire are good. It's going to be, you're going to be there for a while, so you might want to do sketches so everybody knows what the overlapping fields of fire are. And also keep in mind that if the patrol base is compromised and you do not have a way out and you are encircled, that is going to be your fighting ground. That is going to be your caisson. So you are going to have to hold that position to survive. I believe the movie We Were Soldiers kind of showed that, and not that it was intentional to be pinned down or whatever, but you got to prepare for the enemy preventing you from withdrawing, and you might have to stay in your ground. So, of course, reconnaissance is a big deal, and once you are there, there's some things that you're going to have to do, a process that you're going to have to go through. So that's really, you're going to have to have the individuals after they're in place recon their own areas and out a good ways. Basically, the limit of visibility. This isn't, in the Marine Corps, we were taught to go ahead and eliminate foliage that would give the enemy, an approaching enemy, covering concealment, but I think that kind of points out your position a little bit, but that's why you select areas where you do have good fields of fire and stuff like that, and you do have good coverage, and covering concealment for yourself with minimum for the enemy. That's like having a little area of woods where you're able to be concealed from a moving enemy, but there's fields around you for you to have visible security and very little cover and concealment for an approaching enemy that might have detected you and decides to assault your position. So next thing is you might want to actually set out LPOP positions for people that are on watch. So you would have watch not only setting up rotations for the inside of the patrol base, depending on how big your squad or platoon is, but also in certain areas like likely avenues of approach or areas where you can actually look long distance to see if there's an approaching enemy. So that would be a consideration. And then in placing, like if you have claymores or some kind of early warning trip flares or something like that, you would set that up at this time after the reconnaissance is conducted, and the LPOPs are set out because while you're doing those things like setting up trip flares and mines and stuff, you want to have security watching out for any approaching enemy. Kind of common sense stuff. Security is a constant thing whenever you're outside the wire, right? Even inside the wire, you want to watch them back, so to speak. So the next thing is tasks that you're going to perform at the patrol base. So once you got everything secure, you got your rotation all steady and stuff, this is when you're going to start conducting planning for your next mission. You're going to go ahead and pre-plan and recon your next movement. So Leader's Recon might actually treat it like almost like an ORP. So you might scout your ORP for conducting an ambush. You might conduct reconnaissance for not only your ORP and your step-off point from your ORP, but also the kill zone, the general areas that you might want to ambush. You just know that in this area there's movement, so I want to go ahead and look for areas, kind of track enemy movements and stuff like that, and go ahead and pre-plan where you're going to go either the next day, or even if you're just doing reconnaissance, pre-plan your area that you're going to be moving, whether that's map reconnaissance or physical reconnaissance, preferably both. So that's what command would generally be doing, along with communications with higher if you do have a higher. Also, with that planning, you're also briefing everybody on what's to be expected, and everybody who's lower and even the chain of command needs to have chow, have water, and maintain their weapons. You know, make sure that they're clean, oiled, lubricated, ready to go, and that they're getting some Z's while they can, resting up, and making sure their feet are all good, stuff like that. And if there were any injuries during the movement, now would probably be a good time to take them out of ways and either casevac them or hold them in the patrol base and treat those injuries or whatever that they sustain while en route to the patrol base. So, anyways, that's basically it. So, after you've been there for like 24 hours or however long you need to be, you should not really be occupying it all that long. You should be moving to a different area after you've conducted the next mission or you've moved out. You don't use that as your campsite for long term, because likely that the enemy is going to figure out where you're at, and if they do, they might take them time to go ahead and set up a strategy for assaulting your area. So you don't want to give them that chance, so you do want to move out. But while you are there, one of the tasks that I didn't mention, and really should be set up before you get to those tasks to have in chow, is to camouflage your areas if it's not already well camouflaged. So that's a very important thing to do. But anyways, tearing down your patrol base, you need to sanitize it. And this is one of the tasks that you need to keep in mind, or one of the things you need to keep in mind while you're conducting tasks and even in the process of setting up everything. You need to make it easy to sterilize. You need to conduct counter tracking in the sense of, making sure that you're not leaving much sign of your existence or presence, as it were. So maybe before you bed down, you might want to scrape off the first layer of soil if you're going to be laying down, and having a pile of that stuff so you can actually lay that down when you leave. Making sure that you're being very gentle with moving foliage and stuff, and generally keeping noise and light to a very minimum, and make sure that it's covered, and also making sure that you're moving slowly throughout your patrol base, because you might actually have people that think they hear you or see you, and it's just, you always got to be treating it like the enemy's trying to find you. So that's just part of security. These are lessons learned in blood. So anyways, when you withdraw, basically good to do reconnaissance on your path. Make sure your leaders would typically do this, where your scouting element would do this, where you're scouting out the position, you're observing your area, making sure that the timing isn't coincidental or whatever, that you step off and you end up having contact with the enemy. So you recon your area, make sure that there's no patrols that are en route or whatever, and then you go ahead and step off afterwards. So it is a pretty intricate process. There is a lot of thought, but the main thing is that naturally allows you to conduct all of this is you maintain security the whole time. That's the easiest thing to remember, is the whole time it's all about security and setting yourself up for security. You're always trying to be as safe as possible, limit casualties where you can, and keep your security as high as reasonably possible without wearing people out. So there's a lot of reconnaissance involved. There's a lot of constant thought and constant security measures and stuff like that. So that's just one of the things to consider. And also the patrol base can be used as a step-off point for conducting ambushes and stuff, but generally speaking, you want to stash everything and not have a patrol base where you go back to for your rucks. That's typically what an ORP is for. So patrol bases are generally overnight things, so you can get your rest or long-term rest even if it's during the day, but it's very limited in scope. When it comes to the mission, you're generally just going to use the ORP for stashing rucks and stuff like that, doing last-minute maintenance and stuff like that. And generally before missions, I would say it would probably be good for the leader to understand a general area after the withdrawal from that mission, to have a general area where they're going to be setting up an ORP, but that could obviously change from compromise and stuff. So anyways, this was a heck of a video with the chalkboard of death, so I hope you got a little bit something out of it. Have a little bit more respect for the small unit tactics that go into actually operating in the field, especially for days at a time, or 1-2 days or whatever. There is a lot of planning there. You can't just tromp through the woods or whatever, tromp through your area without some actual deliberate planning and deliberate consideration and stuff like that. So anyways, I appreciate you guys watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.